Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this panel discussion as we participate in World's Day Against Trafficking in Person, which was first designated by the United Nations in 2013 in an effort to bring global awareness to the issue of human trafficking. My name is Caridad Mas Bachelor, and I currently serve as the Interim Deputy Director for the International Rescue Committee in Miami and as the Task Force Coordinator for the South Florida Human Trafficking Task Force. Just to give our viewers some context, the International Rescue Committee has provided services to survivors of human trafficking since 2003. Currently, the IRC has 2 anti-trafficking programs in Miami and Tallahassee, Florida. Since the inception of these programs, we have served over 570 victims of trafficking through comprehensive services. Today's panel discussion is being hosted in partnership with the South Florida Human Trafficking Task Force, which is a federally funded task force composed of over 400 diverse members from various sectors in the South Florida area. I want to thank the outreach committee members of the task force who are not only participating in as panelists today, but also assisted us in putting this panel together. Today, we are joined by thought leaders and practitioners in South Florida who work within the anti-trafficking movement. I will serve as the moderator for this panel discussion, and I'm joined by Regina Bernadin, IRC's Technical Advisor for Anti-Trafficking Programs, Selma, the IRC Miami's Anti-Trafficking Caseworker, Dr. Jihan Omar, Citrus Health's Clinical Supervisor, and Dr. Keisha Gray, the Children's Services Council of Broward County Chair. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Carrie.
Hello.
Thank you to all the panelists for taking time to participate in this discussion. To start off, I want to give everyone the opportunity to introduce themselves and let our viewers know who you are and the work that you do. So we'll start with Regina.
Sure. Hi, Caridad, and hi, everyone. Happy to see everyone today in this forum. So as you mentioned, my name is Regina Bernadin, and I currently serve as the Technical Advisor for Anti-Trafficking Programs for the International Rescue Committee. As you mentioned, the IRC is a global humanitarian organization working in over 40 countries and 20 plus cities around the United States. And we currently have robust anti-trafficking programming in 12 different cities around the United States, in Europe as well. And so I'll talk a little bit about my role a little bit later on and how I support them. My work has started in this community and continue to be based out of this community. So happy to be part of this conversation.
And we're happy to have you. You can't leave us, Regina. Still in Miami, still part of the South Florida community. And Selma, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. So nice to see you. My name is Selma Jasarevic, and I am the Human Trafficking Caseworker in Miami. So I handle all of our direct services with both survivors of labor and sex trafficking down in Miami.
Thank you, Selma. The day-to-day work, and I know you'll dive into it a little bit later, but we're thankful for the work that you do. Dr. Omar.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me and including me in this panel. I am Dr. Jihan Omar. I'm the Program Director for Citrus Health Network's CHANCE program, that stands for Citrus Helping Adolescents Negatively Impacted by Commercial Exploitation. Some of you might be familiar with the program, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later. But I oversee our therapeutic foster care program and our CHANCE services. So excited to be here.
Thank you, Dr. Omar. We're happy to have you. And Dr. Keisha Gray.
Hello, good morning. My name is Dr. Keisha Gray, and I am with the Children's Services Council of Broward County. I serve as CSC's strategy manager, where I am directly responsible for providing backbone support to the Broward Children's Strategic Plan. I am also, I have the opportunity to chair the STARS Committee, which is a subcommittee of the Broward Human Trafficking Coalition. STARS, which stands for Stop Trafficking and Rescue Survivors, focuses on the juvenile aspects of human trafficking, and the committee is actively working to identify gaps in service provision and works to ensure that there are points of contact that will work together and enhance the service provision for juvenile victims of human trafficking.
Thank you, Dr. Gray, and thank you for joining us. And thank you all for your introduction. And just that even with the brief introductions you've given, I can already I look forward to the viewers having a more understanding of the day-to-day work that you all do in our community. A quick note for the viewers, if you have any questions as the panelists are speaking, feel free to leave your questions in the comment section, and then we'll try to answer them towards the end of the panel discussion. So let's jump right into it. Panelists, to assist viewers in getting a general understanding of human trafficking, which we understand that oftentimes in a 1-hour presentation, we're not going to be able to fully encompass that. Can each of you briefly explain human trafficking as it impacts your daily work? And we'll start with you, Regina.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I work for the IRC. I've actually been working in the area of anti-trafficking for 15 years, 13 years with the organization in various roles, providing direct services as case manager, also supervising the program actually at the IRC in Miami, and later providing oversight to the anti-trafficking programming in Miami and Tallahassee. And so today as a technical advisor, while not directly working with survivors, what I do is support our various programs in Sacramento, California, Abilene, Texas, and Serbia, and all across our country in supporting with capacity building. There are communities where, despite the fact that we have this year we observed 20 years of the passing of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, and actually all 50 states currently have anti-trafficking legislation, there are still communities that are just starting to build a coordinated response to address human trafficking. And so where we are in communities of that type and where we have a presence, we have teams that are working with the local stakeholders and helping them develop a protocol. So what do you do if you get a call? And, we talk about the fact that a lot of times things happen outside of our 9 to 5. And so what do you do when a lot of the systems are closed or people are gone? And we need to build up communities to be able to address those needs. So I help with the support, the capacity building efforts, the protocol development, and also case consultation. As we've seen with the evolution of trafficking, when someone asks, what does a typical trafficking case look like, it's so diverse. I mean, we're talking about working with, and in our particular case, we work with men, women, and children, transgender survivors of labor and sex trafficking. And we recently pulled some data and saw that as an organization, we've worked with survivors from 48 different countries speaking over 30 languages. And so with that diversity, also at times, I get requests from teams to be able to look at scenarios and is this trafficking, and look at is this labor exploitation, which so many years later we're still field. And like I said, in those conversations, still connected to what's going on in the ground and being able to share that across the network so others see what other patterns and trends we're seeing throughout the country.
Thank you so much, Regina. Yeah, the position allows for that intersectionality between all the things and efforts that are taking place within IRC, and for you to be that focal point to be able to provide that support. So I know, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, and if you don't mind me asking, a lot of my experience comes from working in the South Florida community. I mean, this is where, like I said, I started my career and I'm still currently based. And so South Florida, we have to recognize that it's one of the first communities that began to address and combat human trafficking. So a lot of what I share now pulls from those experiences.
Exactly. No, thank you so much. Selma, same question.
Thanks, Carrie. So again, my name is Selma and I'm the direct services provider for the human trafficking program in Miami. So with that role, like Regina said, we assist both survivors of labor and sex trafficking. And I think for context, it'll be good to understand the definition of both. So I'm going to read the Trafficking Victims Protection Act definition of both labor and sex trafficking. So sex trafficking, human trafficking is sex trafficking in which a commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or in which the person induced to perform such act has not attained 18 years of age, or the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for labor services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of subjection to involuntary servitude, debt bondage, or slavery. So what my role is as a direct service provider is we receive referrals from really all over the country from different service providers who are seeking advocacy for their survivors that they've identified. So we'll do an intake and we'll assess their needs and go from there in terms of being able to provide that direct service and intensive need that they present with.
Right, and as you both have mentioned, right, each case is unique and each need is as unique as the case. And so it's interesting that while we're based out of South Florida, those cases may vary in need and collaboration and partnership as we work to helping that survivor reach that next phase. Dr.
Absolutely.
Omar.
Hi again. So again, I'm Dr. Omar, I'm Program Director for our Chance program at Citrus Health Network. So our population is children and youth who are in foster care. The majority of our youth are young adolescents. And as we know, many of us, that children in foster care are the most vulnerable population. And so they are the ones often most touched by human trafficking. So our goal and our mission has been to really, in every way possible, therapeutically, through life coaching and mentorship, case management, and the wealth of the treatment services that we provide, is to support the children so that they feel that they have strengths and that they have their own independent aspirations and that they aren't lured into this lifestyle. Both from a preventative standpoint and then those who've also been victims of human trafficking, to help them survive and overcome it. So it is very challenging because oftentimes they are kind of lured in by boyfriends or, by running away. And so, we are at a constant battle and really trying to, save the kids and provide them the best services we can. So we've been pretty successful. Our program has achieved a lot of national attention because, we were the first of its kind. And so we have a lot of children who come through, and we've been quite successful in being able to assist them. But, the fight continues. So I think it's a daily struggle for us, in terms of how it affects our population, because whether it's males or females, prevention or intervention, either way, it impacts them in some regard. And so, and then we work collaboratively with, a lot of the different agencies and task force in Miami and Dade County to support one another, even with law enforcement, to help us identify and recover some of the youth and to provide trainings. So, we're really grateful that we've been able to kind of have such a rich collaboration here in Miami-Dade County to really support, the different agencies and to kind of help our kids grow. And I think that's been a big help for us to have the collaboration, because then we have a lot of supports from different aspects and different community providers to help us, ensure the children's success.
Yeah, no, it's great work. And how long has Citrus Health been providing the services to the community in Miami?
Services in general, since the 70s. Services of the Chance program since 2013.
Yeah.
But so Chance itself was developed 2013, but what we always emphasize to our foster parents, to our clinicians, to our providers is these are the same kids that we've always been working with. They didn't just emerge, as you guys know. But we are now able to kind of identify, some of these facets of them more closely and figure out different ways to really reach them and help them. So it's an ongoing challenge, and it's a lot of ongoing training and support for the providers as well. So these are the moments that we need to continue to kind of raise each other up.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Omar. And Dr. Gray.
In my role as the chair for STARS, one of the primary things that we've been focused on for the last, I want to say about 1.5 to 2 years, has been on education and awareness in our community and making sure that, I think as service providers, we have a knowledge base that oftentimes our lay community members do not. And so it's helping parents to be able to identify when their children might be at risk, and then also being able to identify resources in our community that come from agencies like Citrus that might be able to support their youth when they are in need of support. And so we've spent a lot of time over the last 2 years really focused on educating the community, educating other service providers also educating funding agencies as well as to what the needs may be for youth victims of human trafficking. And then also since probably last month in June, we also held a community conversation where we discussed issues around supporting Black girls in our community. In Broward County, Black girls are the highest number of youth victims of human trafficking. And it was important for us to also let the community be aware how to support the girls before they even become victims of human trafficking. How can we change our systems and our policies to really be supportive of our girls so that they don't fall into the hands of traffickers. And traffickers look like many of us here on the panel today. There is no cookie cutter. I can't tell you a trafficker is 5'7" tall, Black male or white male. It can be just about anybody. And it was important for us as a committee and with the support of Broward Human Trafficking Coalition's president, Shamara Johnson, to really get out into the community to educate people so that they could understand the data and understand how to support our youth so they do not get deeper and deeper into the system and become victims of human trafficking.
Thank you, Dr. Gray. And I appreciate you joining our panel today to give us that context of the realities of Broward County. While we all are part of South Florida, we understand, those of us that do the work on a regular basis, that while county lines don't stop trafficking from happening, trafficking may look a little bit different in those counties. And so I appreciate you being here representing and giving us the context of what human trafficking looks like in Broward County. Well, thank you all. I think that definitely sets the tone to giving our viewers an understanding of the work that you all do. So I'll jump right into my first question for you, Regina. I briefly described the history of the anti-trafficking work in Miami and the Tallahassee offices, but can you provide a little bit more information on how IRC began its work in the anti-trafficking movement?
Sure. So the International Rescue Committee was founded in 1933 at the request of Albert Einstein. So it's in our history in working with vulnerable populations and responding to short-term and long-term conflict and the needs of communities throughout the world. And so in early 2000s, we actually, at least here in South Florida, partnered with, and it's very interesting for me to hear with everybody and keep echoing the piece about collaboration, right? Not one agency can do it alone. We all work together and use that multidisciplinary approach to combat the issue. And the same thing happened back in early 2000s with us and some of our partners starting to see what we didn't know at that time was human trafficking. But we started seeing a combination of labor exploitation and particularly focused on with foreign nationals. And because of IRC's expertise in working with marginalized populations, particularly immigrants in the United States, we actually were funded by the Department of Justice to begin programming in 2003. And our first sites in the country were actually in Seattle, Washington, Phoenix, Arizona, and Miami, Florida. And so since then, IRC has been able to and had the opportunity to increase its footprint. And as I mentioned, we provide direct services, and what that looks like, I'm sure Selma will discuss a little bit more about the direct service side of our work. But our focus has been direct services, education, right? It goes hand in hand. We want to get that information out there. We want people to know, for example, from the immigrant standpoint, about the fact of even if you are in the United States, undocumented, or you cross the border, knowingly cross the border without the proper authorization, if this happened to you, now there are protections for you as a victim of a crime, and encourage that people coming forward and make those connections to law enforcement, to those who are ready to provide that information on and begin an investigation. And so our focus has been on that education, and that looks like through outreach and public awareness. This is an example of something like that as well, right? A lot of combination of use of social media and grassroots efforts of providing information, being at tabling events. And so for those out there who have events, I know now in the COVID world, it looks a little bit different, but it's great to connect for that piece. Excuse me. And also the education piece includes trainings and presentations. And then lastly, I'm going to put the plug in for our newest program, which is Framework. We were in 2019. We were awarded the first trafficking grant from the Department of Justice to provide training and technical assistance on labor trafficking, which is a prevalent but under recognized part of the human trafficking victimization and crime. And so our work to summarize, our work at the IRC focuses on that direct service provision. To this day, direct services, education, and now with this new training and technical assistance component, we're happy to be able to reach communities nationally to raise the profile on labor trafficking.
And that's great. As you mentioned, right, I think the community doesn't quite know what labor trafficking is. Underreported doesn't mean it's not there. It's just if we don't know how to identify it, and that's where those trainings and outreach events come into place, those numbers are never going to reflect truly the reality of what we're seeing in our community. So, for IRC to be able to get that technical assistance grant and be able to provide support not only within its internal networking but externally as well, it is definitely kudos to the IRC.
Thank you.
So Selma, on a daily basis, I know personally that you're working with survivors of trafficking and providing them with ongoing support. What would you describe as being their primary needs right now? And right now in general, or right now in context of COVID, however you'd like to answer that?
Sure. So prior to COVID happening, our clients already had needs. One of the biggest ones I would say is probably rental assistance. So really the pandemic has exacerbated that situation for everybody, but more so for clients who are already struggling. Mm-hmm. So that really has been probably our biggest need that we have seen as the onset of COVID has happened. I would say an additional need that we have seen is definitely mental and physical health. And luckily, again, that collaboration piece that Regina touched on, we work with so many wonderful people in the community, both in Broward and in Dade, and really just all across Florida, if that is a necessity, to refer those clients to those mental health providers and have them see those doctors that they previously wouldn't have been able to see. And luckily, we're able to offset those costs for those appointments, which really just takes a lot of that burden off of our survivors' shoulders.
Yeah, and we mentioned it earlier, right? Those needs are unique, and to be able to have that collaborative approach already in place, that as those needs come up, we can know who to make those referrals to ensure that they're receiving trauma-informed, victim-centered services within the South Florida area, right? So our current grant here at the Miami office covers from Monroe County up to the northern part of Broward. And that's why it's very important for us to ensure that we have those collaborative partnerships with the community, both in Miami and Broward. So thank you so much, Selma.
Terry, if you don't mind me adding, I know that Selma mentioned that the grant helps to offset the cost, but I just want to reinforce that and clarify that it means that all the services that are provided are pro bono services to survivors of all forms of human trafficking. And I know that I even talked about the education piece, focusing an example with the foreign national side, but I also want to mention that we work with all, and that includes American citizen and legal permanent resident survivors as well.
Thank you, Regina.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up because again, right, as we mentioned, that trafficking looks different in between counties. Providing services looks different between U.S. citizen and foreign nationals. And I know we'll be talking with Selma a little bit later about some of those differences, but thank you for bringing that point up, Regina. Dr. Omar, you provided us with a little bit of context of the services that are provided at Citrus Health, but could you give us more details as to what those services look like and how they can be accessed?
Sure. So basically, Chance, like I said, was developed in 2013 as a need that the DCF and the county were seeing. What they saw was a trend growing with human trafficking. So basically, we developed first. They approached Dr. McGrath and asked, in your opinion, you've been working with this population for a long time. What do you guys see as the needs? So that's where our specialized STFC homes came in, and STFC stands for Specialized Therapeutic Foster Care. So we already have, we already operate a few dozen therapeutic foster homes in Miami-Dade and Broward County. And from that population, we carved out a special subgroup, the Green Berets of the STFC families, if you will, who then we provided an additional intensive trainings, the trainings that, we in this room are very familiar with in terms of understanding the trauma associated with human trafficking, the risk factors, so on and so forth. A 24-hour training that we provided these parents with. And we basically said that our thought was to put one child in the home instead of two, so that child could get specialized focus, attention. They wouldn't be negatively influenced by peers. They wouldn't negatively influence other peers. As we know, recruitment can tend to be a big factor in this population. And so, so we had foster homes specially trained. All the clinicians then became specially trained. They were trained in evidence-based approaches, TFCBT, motivational interviewing. Some are trained in evidence-based behavioral management approaches. And we had the targeted case managers trained. We brought on survivor mentors, who we call life coaches, to assist. So we basically wrapped these kids in as many services, as many supports, as many providers as that they would need. So they would have a survivor mentor life coach. They would have individual therapy, not once a week, but at least twice a week and more if needed. The clinicians are, and actually the whole team is on call to these children and families 24/7. So, and that's because that's what happens. They'll call you at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, middle of the night, maybe Sunday morning. And so we knew that, we would be on call to them. We developed a commitment to continuity, which meant that we know that these kids were constantly getting, removed from foster homes, put in different placements, different shelters. And every time they did, what would happen? They'd get a whole new treatment team. So then we, developed our commitment to continuity of care. So if they went to SIP in the CATS program in Pembroke Pines, we continued, on that case. If they were placed in a shelter, we continued on that case. So that way they had that kind of, that their person, their constant figure who was always there at least. And then the team was very familiar with them so that we could collaborate with the new providers and assist and so on and so forth. And then, as you know, MDT staffings that we worked with, the Miami Cares Project and, other agencies and organizations to continue to kind of make sure we were monitoring and supervising, providing the services they need, as well as Grace Court. I mean, this could be a training in and of itself. So basically, we carved out about 15 STFC homes. And so over the years, we've lost some, we've gained more. But what ended up happening is that the number of referrals we got for the homes and the number of children needed to be placed in these homes far exceeded the number of homes we had. And so we developed our Chance CRT program, which is an extension of our therapeutic foster home model. But basically, we would provide all the same services, the life coach, the increased individual therapy and family therapy if needed, therapeutic groups if possible, all the therapeutic services, case management, but in their current placements. So some of them are in group homes, some of them are in regular foster care, some of them are in relative caregiver placements. And so we would provide those services. And if the parents or providers were interested, we'd also, provide some additional training. So the difference is that the parents weren't mandated to participate in the HT training. So we would try, through the therapist to kind of provide that ongoing support and psychoeducation. So that program, as you would imagine, has gotten, quite large, and we've expanded that into Broward as well. So, like I said, I think I could spend a couple more hours talking about the nature of our services, but I think I can stop there and leave it for you guys to ask more questions. One other thing is that we do, one of the things that we were able to kind of attribute and was to validate the program. We partnered with USF from the beginning of the program. And so they've been conducting a program evaluation with us since 2013 and happy to say that it's shown significant results. So we have emerged as a promising practice. And so we're looking forward to kind of just further, assisting and helping more youth.
Wow. That's what I'll say.
I know it's a mouthful. No, it's well, because I could say more.
No, it's impressive. And it's great to know that there's a partner in our community that is doing that work, that is taking into consideration both the children in dependency system and those that are, that can benefit from the services at large. So thank you, Dr. Omar. And one of the common themes that I've seen come up, and we've said it a few times, is this the theme of collaboration. And so, Dr. Gray, my question to you is, how do you feel that collaboration in a community enhances our ability to make informed decisions in the anti-trafficking movement?
So I think one of the main ways that helps is the availability of data. So a lot of times we can have a lot of conversations, but if we don't ground them in data, I like to say follow the data, see what the data story tells you. And so when we collaborate across agencies, we're able to share data. And when we share data, we can share conversations and we can dissect the data to better understand why we're seeing the information that we're seeing, why our youth are having the experiences that they're having in our community. An example of that would be in Broward, through our partnership with the STARS Committee, we have a relationship with the Department of Children and Families Child Protective Investigation Section, where they give us at our quarterly meetings data as it relates to how many alleged victims of human trafficking and how many verified victims of human trafficking as youth victims of human trafficking were identified. And what we've been able to do with that data is to really take a deeper dive into the data to look at maybe gender. So we realized that we were not seeing any males that were being identified. And so now we can focus on some gender responsive programming to understand and to help even our investigators understand how and the importance of not looking at males and asking the same sorts of questions that they would ask to a female youth victim, so that we can identify possible male victims of human trafficking. We've also, through collaboration, been able to identify, as I mentioned before, that our Black girls are the #1 victims of trafficking in our community. Between 2016 and 2018, we had over 590 reports of youth human trafficking victims in Broward County. 227 victims were verified. And so if we did not have that relationship, we all would have been sitting around just talking about this thing that exists, but not really being able to ground it. And so now as we sit with potential funders in our community, we can share with them where those gaps are and where they can put their funding around to create a better and safer community for our youth. Another gap that we're seeing in our data, again, this is through collaboration, is the inability to identify our LGBT youth who may be victims of trafficking. And so as we move the work forward, the Broward Human Trafficking Coalition has also been working with other agencies to identify for policy change. So at the state level, we're better able to identify our LGBT victims of human trafficking. And that can be a simple thing as when you're doing that intake and you're asking the questions, the same questions that are helping us to identify our girls, we're allowing our LGBT youth to identify themselves how they identify versus just a straight male-female, which, as we know, also helps with our under-identification. With that, however, Broward County has been blessed to have a group that meets to review cases on a regular basis. And through that in-depth analysis, we've been able to identify potential LGBTQ youth who might be potential victims of human trafficking. And so those are some of the wins when we collaborate across agencies and share our data that we're able to get. And so what then that means is as we begin to create programs and services, we now know what kind of programs and services are needed for our community based on the data.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, right? As we know, we get more and more individuals and programs that are now becoming part of the anti-trafficking efforts within the various communities that we're in. But if we're all doing the same work, there's still going to be those gaps. And so the data that will allow us to be able to focus in on what is needed and making sure that those decisions are being informed, and that the community, whether it be Miami-Dade, Broward, or even Monroe County, for the context of our conversation here, we can make sure that they're being informed. And so I know for the IRC, it's that collaborative approach that we are constantly wanting to make a priority. As we know, and Regina mentioned early on, not one agency can do it all. And so I appreciate your comments on how that collaboration can end to attainable results that impact the survivors of human trafficking. Well, you guys have just really provided like just a ton of information. And I know all of you, and I still, every time I hear all the work you do, I'm still in awe. So I hope that the viewers are also gaining some great knowledge from this panel discussion. So we're gonna jump into additional questions that I have for you all. And this one, Regina, is for you. You mentioned earlier that in your role as technical advisor, you're providing support to the various offices that have anti-trafficking program within the IRC network. Could you share with us what are some of those trends you're seeing within those programs?
Sure, definitely. And before, if you don't mind, before I address, I want to just make a point to what Dr. Gray just shared about the importance of data. I mean, like I mentioned, I think earlier on, this 20th year, that we observed the passing of the, Trafficking Victims Protection Act. But when we look at things that we hope the next 20 years reflect, right, that evolution of this movement, part of it is the lack of data that we still have when we're asked about how many survivors, are not just in our local communities, but around the world, or just painting a picture through numbers is still something that we struggle to do with. So I really commend Broward and the work that's being done with, partners to be able to make decisions informed by the data that is being collected. So I definitely wanted to acknowledge that and just make that comment. About that. So I'm going to share just 3 quick trends that I've been able to see. Some of them were pre-COVID and some now because of the reality of the pandemic. I think we can't have this conversation without including the fact of even this forum being held, virtually because as a result of in part because of the result of COVID. So one of the things is migration. And in the sense of, we're seeing it in the United States with the increase in unaccompanied minors. And we had seen actually the increase in unaccompanied minors, or at least the increase of unaccompanied minors who were trafficked. So let me go ahead and clarify that, meaning children coming from many of our countries in neighboring countries in Central America and crossing into the United States. We had seen increase throughout the last few years, but I want to just share that as far as from the trafficking angle, many children, and we're seeing a theme of children, right? Whether it is our American youth or domestic minors who are being trafficked, as Dr. Omar and Dr. Gray have talked about. But also I want to add that layer also of the foreign national minor who in the last few years, we have seen an increase in children coming into the United States, escaping gang violence because of family, reunification. And, but now because of where we are seeing also now children being exploited once with, being within the United States. So prior to, a lot of the trafficking occurred as a result of they were escaping trafficking in home country or during migration, and the United States became a refuge and a new home. And now we're seeing an increase in trafficking post arrival, the hands of caregivers and others who exploit that vulnerability of youth and vulnerability of minors escaping poverty and potentially child abuse as well. The other piece is, like I mentioned, about labor trafficking. We are seeing the recognition that labor trafficking is being under reported and under represented in a lot of conversations. So recently I was part of a conversation in another, the task force of another sister office more, not that it's more challenging, but labor trafficking, if we really think about it, everything outside of the sex trade. So you're trafficking in agriculture, in restaurants, in construction, any of these formal and other informal sectors all falls under the umbrella of labor trafficking. And some of it, as domestic servitude, happens inside someone's home. So it's really difficult a lot of times as we do awareness campaigns or for law enforcement, they don't go and knock into someone's home to say, let me go ahead and see, if you don't have actual proof that something's going on or a tip. And the same thing to get information. It's really to target all those different industries. It's challenging with a lot of the lack of resources or the limited resources that we have. And the last piece is around COVID-19. Overall, I think as a movement, as a sector, as a field, we're all adapting our approach to identification because of this. Like everything, this also presents an opportunity, right? An opportunity for us to strengthen our presence, maybe whether it is more through the use of social media or through the use of other mediums to reach survivors. But it also hinders those one-on-one connections that we made with some communities in which we were able to have a more, it took a long time to build those relationships, and now there's a barrier that's been put our way. And so that doesn't mean that we haven't still seen an increase in numbers, because maybe those who prior to COVID were already in situations where there were precarious labor conditions or a bit of labor exploitation now are being thrust in situations that are full-blown trafficking. So we are seeing those that maybe before were at risk now being exploited, but those that we historically had tried to reach, those communities, now a barrier has been put there. So these are some trends that, like I said, we're looking at those points of opportunity. We're trying to see how we can pivot. But just, yes, the migration of unaccompanied minors and exploitation, labor trafficking, and COVID-19 are three things that are just part of our conversations nationally and very present and current at the moment.
Thank you. And I think that it's fair to say that also being seen by most of our partners or community organizations that are also doing this work locally. So I think it's oftentimes good to hear that you're not alone in some of the struggles, and that we're all trying to figure out how to do this remote work. How do we reach our communities through outreach and training remotely? And so as we all, again, through that collaborative approach, learn of these best practices as in this new realm of remote work, we can only benefit by sharing and communicating what those advancements or opportunities are. So thank you, Regina. So on the same kind of note there, we've mentioned a few times that the IRC in Miami serves all survivors of human trafficking, all forms of trafficking. But as we said, oftentimes the foreign national population or, labor trafficking survivors are the most underreported or discussed. Selma, to you, what would you say are some of those different challenges that a foreign national survivor may experience, and how IRC can provide support to those specific needs?
So again, like Regina said, we do work with all survivors of human trafficking, regardless of their immigration status. So one of the most important aspects of working with a survivor who is undocumented is trying to get them that documentation so that they're able to access those benefits that are provided here in the U.S. One thing that can facilitate that relationship is that, again, that report to law enforcement that Regina mentioned, to initiate a T visa, which is a trafficking visa given to survivors of human trafficking that allows them to have that status for 3 years, at which point they can apply for more of a permanent status here in the U.S. So obtaining that documentation really is very important. If they don't choose to report, which a lot of survivors don't for their own personal reasons, which we totally understand, we are still able to provide services. They just might not be able to access things such as public benefits that other survivors can access. So we work with the Department of Children and Families to apply for food stamps, SNAP, and Medicaid and cash assistance when applicable. And without type of documentation, unfortunately, they don't qualify for that. So this doesn't mean that they can't still get services. Obviously, we just have to navigate around the fact that they don't have that documentation. So really the biggest challenge is just getting them access to services that require that documentation, which unfortunately a lot do. But thankfully, again, that collaboration piece. We work with so many agencies, especially we have a niche here in South Florida where we understand that that is a challenge, and there have been programs developed to offset the stress that comes with not having any documentation. So we really are just here to navigate them, one, through a program that they've probably never been through, and two, just to really make sure that they are gaining access to those services that can still provide them with that medical care, that mental health, those food resources that we're able to provide, and financial assistance, regardless of that documentation, but also here to support them if they do choose to go through the route of reporting to law enforcement and getting that legal documentation. We're really just here from beginning to end to make sure that they feel supported all the way through.
Perfect. Thank you, Selma. All right, Dr. Omar, we talked about the Specialized Therapeutic Foster Care Program for youth survivors of human trafficking. As you mentioned, there's a need, it's growing quickly. What are some of the current needs of that program that you would like viewers to know about?
From the simplest is obviously more awareness on the part of everybody. And I think that's why, these collaborations are so important. The more, we train and educate the general population, the more they're aware of, their role, like we said, from, hotel management to Uber drivers. For us, from a direct services perspective, the foster parents can burn out. A lot of our foster parents are people who have raised their own children and still have kind of that love and that home to give. So they're older. And so, they can only give so much of themselves. So, sometimes they kind of have to throw in the towel or retire. So every time, and this is kind of indicative of foster care in general, but every time we open a new home, we close 2 others, or, because they just, like I said, they retire, they move out of state, they, for one reason or another, there's a lot of reasons that would impact it. And some, just say we're burnt out. So, right now what we're seeing is because we have such a need to place these youth in homes is recruiting more foster parents. The more foster homes we have, the better we can find, cultural matches, the, better we can, find kids that work with the parents and, try to, match the kids and the parents really well. And sometimes if we're not able to match them, you'd be surprised. We think it's a perfect match. And then we put them in the home of somebody else who we would have never thought they would have worked together, and they did. So that, just gives us more opportunities to really find, a good fit for the kids and to the parents. So really, a big thing for me right now is the recruiting and trying to bring in more foster parents, like I said, because, we maybe 5% of the referrals we get we're able to place. So it's like it's like the Ivy League, you just can't get in. So, but we, but this is, people's lives and well-beings. So we really hate to have to turn so many people away. And so we'd like to recruit more foster homes. And obviously our goal is, from like a scientific perspective, is to kind of expand the program. So we are looking to kind of partner and do, randomized trials. So we can open foster homes in other parts of the, state, country. We have, been fortunate that, we have consulted with a couple of other states, Texas and California, and they're kind of incorporating some of our chance model as well. But, we just need more foster homes. We need more parents who are willing to kind of share their life with these, really wonderful yet, traumatized kids. So.
And, if there's a viewer right now that's hearing this and says, hey, I'm interested in at least learning about how to become a foster parent, what's the best way for them to get in contact with Chance?
They can call me. We can post my number, or we can call it out. And then I can get them in contact with our, licensing staff, who can kind of tell them the specifics of like what the application process is and the training process and so on and so forth. But I'll take the calls myself. And even if they're not interested in Chance and they're just interested in therapeutic foster care, they can still work with us. And even if they're not interested in therapeutic foster care and they're just interested in being foster parents, I can speak to them and direct them to the right agency. Because like I said, this is not just for us. This is for, our kids across the country. So I just had a friend yesterday who I think in another city, so it wouldn't be Chance or anything, but I think I talked into becoming a foster parent. So, So, I think if more people hear about it, they would be willing to do it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that as a community, we don't realize the need of foster parents and the impact that they have. So We appreciate, again, everything you all are doing, and to be able to provide such specialized programming inside of a home setting is I think invaluable, and I think our community should continue to be aware of what that impact has on the youth.
Right. And another area, I think, just I'll say this as an aside and not say too much about it, but just to continue to provide services for our kids who aren't in dependency. The kids who are dependent, they've had their obviously very tough early life experiences, but they have this entire community of people, from the judge all the way to their, therapist, who are, will do everything and bend over backwards to see this child succeed, believe it or not. But kids in the community have much less resources, and they have parents who are burnt out and frustrated, but can't just say, I'm turning in my license. And so there is a great need to kind of touch and reach the community kids, as we call them, who could really use these services. We do offer that through our agency, but it's been limited in terms of how, we've been able to help them. So we do provide a lot of the same services through another department, but again, because of the dynamics, we don't always hear about those cases. They could stop at any time. The parents give up quickly often. I mean, we've seen some success stories as well, but like I said, I think that's a population that doesn't always get heard from.
And that's a great segue. Thank you, Dr. Omar. To my question for Dr. Gray, you touched and provided us some data and some facts about Broward County, and specifically to youth survivors of trafficking in Broward County. But I also know that there's a ton of resources that are available in Broward County, and we talked about that collaboration. Is there a few of those resources that you would like, if there is a youth in Broward County that is watching this video right now, that you think that they can access at this time?
Ooh, we have over 140 providers from Children's Services Council. And those are all agencies that we provide, and they all do fabulous service. So I am in a bit of a pickle to want to be able to choose.
You don't have to pick one.
So I can really think about, so many of our agencies. I think, when I think about collaboration and just really continuing with looking for opportunities for even other collaborators to join in the work that we're doing in Broward, I think about committees like the Girls Coordinating Council that is also focused specifically on gender responsive programming. And so if you are a parent or youth who's looking to get involved in the work in advocating for victims of human trafficking, I think, STARS is one committee that you can come and join, and you can meet several other providers in the community, as well as the Girls Coordinating Council also does do a lot of work. There is a subcommittee called Girls Voices, where youth, young ladies who are interested in using their voices to advocate for other girls may be able to join that committee and really help us to put up the good fight for our victims for human trafficking. I am not going to choose any one provider right now, but if you go to the Children's Services Council website, we do have a family resource guide that was just released that, like I mentioned before, has over 140 programs that we fund, as well as other providers in our community who we don't fund, who provide a plethora of good services for our community. That will be very helpful. So again, that is cscbroward.com. You can go there and you can learn more about a lot of our providers. I think in terms of other resources that I know I definitely can't get in trouble for talking about and naming anyone, because there's only one, the Broward court system, the 17th Circuit Court system, does have a girls' court. So if you have a young lady who is involved in the juvenile justice system and you do want their case to go through girls' court, which is run by Judge Stacy Ross, you can go ahead and reach out to Judge Stacy Ross, and she'll be able to help you to get your young lady's case moved over to girls' court, which is a very specialized court system. It's run by Judge Stacy Ross, And she is extremely supportive of our girls and understands that, like you mentioned before, some of our girls, have been through some really traumatic situations. And so she does offer a listening ear and is aware of providers in our community who are doing gender responsive work, who can work with the youth as well as the parents, so that we can help to prepare for better homes for our youth. I know we talked about needing more foster care homes for our youth. And so her court also provides a really good safety net for our girls. There's also a RISE court in our court system here in Broward County. So if you have a potential human trafficking victim who needs to go through the court system, also reaching out to Judge Stacey Ross, who heads up RISE Court, that's also another system. And that entry point of that court system, if you are involved in the juvenile justice system, you can get connected to many of our providers who are doing awesome work in our community with supporting our youth victims of human trafficking. I really couldn't name anyone because I could see myself getting into a lot of trouble. Yes.
It was not intended to be a leading question. I just know you just have so much information about what's going on in Broward County, and I think you answered it perfectly. And if there is a place where all this information is available, people can go to it and make their own decisions as to them.
Yes.
But the key thing is to letting the community know in Broward County and in all the counties that there are these resource guides, there are these efforts that have already been put in place, right, to be able to centralize this information to be accessed by the community. It's truly been a pleasure to have all of you on this panel discussion, and we haven't received any questions in the comment section, so I did want to make sure I make that comment. We're not bypassing any questions, but I truly would like to thank you all for a great panel discussion and for taking the time. I know right now COVID-19 has all of our schedules just a bit more, it seems, full with meetings and things, and we appreciate you seeing the importance of this event that we've put together here today, and for you all to bring in your expertise and experience in the South Florida community and at large in regards to human trafficking. And we hope that the viewers, whether you're watching it live or you're seeing a recording later, have found this panel discussion to be informative and find that our panelists can serve as resources for you or any individual that you may be working with that may be a victim of human trafficking. So can't say it enough. Thank you all very, very much. If any of the viewers are interested in learning more about the work that is being done in IRC in Florida, you could visit rescue.org/Miami and rescue.org/Tallahassee. As I mentioned earlier, those are our two programs in Florida that provide anti-trafficking services to survivors of human trafficking. And with that, we have a few minutes. So if anybody has any last comments they would like to make, I'd like to open the
I just wanted to, thank you for having us today and the opportunity to engage, the audience. And I also wanted to kind of say that it's exciting that at 2:00 Eastern this afternoon, you also will be hosting a panel on trafficking, the intersections of trafficking and COVID-19. I know that I mentioned that as a trend, so looking forward to seeing that also later on this afternoon.
Thank you, Regina. Always putting in the plugs. I appreciate it. All right. Anybody else? Last comments? Well, either way, thank you all very much. And if we do get contacted by anyone seeking any information from any of you, we will make sure to get in contact, connect you all. Thank you all. This is our thought leaders and practitioners in South Florida, specifically working with human trafficking. So thank you all.